Better now. Is that any better?
Yeah, there we are. We have you now. I'll just pass you over to the Shire President. You're on the front counter.
Hello, Mr. Sheehan. How are you going?
Councillor Ings, well, thank you.
That's good. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name's Michael Sheehan. I'm speaking on behalf of my brother James Sheehan and Jody and their 2 children who are residents on a property in the Shire. Fundamentally, the issue about the bridge isn't just about the asset, but it's Donnybrook Shire Council. Its decisions and its actions should be fair and reasonable. The properties that were subdivided, including James and Jody's and the Millers and others in the area, were subdivided pre-World War II in the 1920s, I believe. But in James and Jody's, for James and Jody's property and for the Millers' property, neither of these properties had approved road reserves ever built by the local government authorities. It may have been through historical ownership of multiple titles or similar. However, it has resulted in James and Jody's property and the Millers' property currently being landlocked from safe legal access. Rates have been paid on these properties, but no access ever developed by council. Rates have been paid the same as every other property in the Shire that does have access, that has had roads built. Roads that in many cases, the ends of which will only service 1 or 2 properties. Donnybrook Shire Council approved, through its prior organisational structure, approved the resumption of a road reserve to one side of James and Jody's property. The reasons for this have not been able to be ascertained through freedom of information, given the age. So we're unsure why that road reserve was approved by council for resumption. A road reserve to the Millers' property is still an approved legal road reserve, able to be developed by council at any stage, and if developed, would give safe legal access to the Millers' property. However, Donnybrook Shire Council to date has refused to even look at costing or considering this option, regardless of the fact that this property was subdivided at the same time as the majority of the properties in that local area. For the bridge itself, a structure with a value that I estimate to be in the vicinity of $750,000. I've had to make that estimate myself based on the $190,000 plus repair bill and legal costs for implementing the proposal by Donnybrook Shire Council for unilaterally forcing a degradation in the land value of the Millers and the Sheehans somewhere in the vicinity of $375,000 each by imposing and transferring a structure with a substantial legacy and a requirement for ongoing repair and maintenance, for them simply to have access to their property to be able to live within the Shire. I've had to estimate that value because to date Council has refused to engage or quantify what they believe the value of the bridge is, and even refused to quantify or detail the legislative requirements that would be applicable if the bridge was taken over by James and Jody and the Millers. Council, in their failure to reasonably communicate with owners of an asset, definitely upwards of $500,000, but in my estimate at somewhere in the vicinity of $750,000, communication up until the point of catastrophic failure of the bridge, with notice, 2 notices, one following the other in 5 days mid last year, that pretty much said there are some issues with the bridge. Subsequently, we had to close the bridge within a couple of days. This is not reasonable, not
So this is the advice that was received from the Minister of Transport. Is that the document he's referring to?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
From the Minister for Transport, Planning and Ports?
Correct.
Yes.
Yep. In that letter, you can clearly see from a state government perspective, the Minister for Transport, Planning and Ports not only notes that the bridge is controlled and managed by council, but that very clearly all repairs and maintenance are a responsibility of council. What is making the treatment of this bridge that is legally controlled and managed by council, as demonstrated through actions they've undertaken in the last 12 months, and more consistently over the reported life of the bridge, that has now brought it to a point where council is now unilaterally making decisions to deny landholders access to their own property and trying to impose costs in future degradation of their property values without considering broader context. More recently, council has cut off communication from our perspective in quoting more and more often everything leading to confidence, not tenderising the agenda briefing figures or legal and questioning confidence, and there's no visibility or openness or transparency to understand what principles are being applied in determining or trying to seek resolution to this issue. To understand why council isn't considering the development of the road reserve to at least give the millers access to their property, and potentially, if that were to be the case, then to enable James and Jody to negotiate access through the millers' property via that road reserve. So I'm significantly concerned that the ongoing reporting of this matter does not appear from my perspective to honestly or fully communicate the contents of the bridge file or the background of the situation.
Mr. Sheehan, you've got one. Mr. Sheehan.
The agenda items, so we do not know which way to go.
Mr. Sheehan.
Yes.
You've got 1 minute to go.
Sorry, Councillor.
Mr. Sheehan, you've got 1 minute remaining on your deputation.
Okay. I might wrap it up there and make myself available for any questions of any councillor.
Are there any questions from the councillors? Yes, we have one question so far. Well, Councillor Massey.
Thank you. Would it be possible to make available to councillors a written summary or transcript of that? Because due to the phone conversation and the muffledness, I couldn't quite catch every word. Thank you.
Yeah, I would probably play off the top of my head there. No, I can attempt to document
I don't recall the actual value of the bridge, but I will pass you over to the Director of Operations.
The responses that have been provided to councillors are exactly the same as the ones that have been provided to Mr Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr Potter. Are there any more questions from the councillors? No, thank you. I have one more question. I have one question, Mr Sheehan. I'm just passing you up. Yep, passing it over a bit closer. Can you hear me?
I can.
In regards to the road reserve that was taken away on the west side of James and Jodie's property, has James or yourself actually contacted those people to the west for like a permanent access right-of-way type scenario for the property?
We have, yes, so we have negotiated, requested through the three neighbours to the west, if it were possible to negotiate a temporary or permanent right-of-way. The conditions given for a temporary right-of-way were installation of fencing and padlocks on gates, which would be reasonable, but cost a significant amount. However, it was very clear from the main landholder through which the access would traverse that temporary was going to be no more than 12 months. The timeline was about to expire, and therefore has been $10,000 to $15,000 to install fences and all-weather road for something that was not going to enable permanent access. It was deemed not possible.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, I do have another question from the floor. Councillor Newman.
Through the Madam President, Mr Sheehan, is it when James and Jodie purchased the property, were they aware of the access issues that existed in relation to the bridge or permanent access to the property at the time?
No.
Okay, so you said no, they weren't actually given any information.
The first information given was one sentence on a rates notice.
Okay, thank you. So no knowledge of it during their purchasing phase.
No, and in fact, the person selling provided emails from prior council members acknowledging that the bridge was controlled and managed by council, and that in the email chain we saw, and I have copies of it, it clearly says, you know, council are looking after the bridge. So at that point, there was no need to clarify anything further. Or, sorry, we thought there was no need to clarify anything further.
I should have put that on.
Thank you for your deputation. I'm just curious about that email chain that came from the Shire. Have you presented that previously to our CEO?
Sorry, Councillor Inge, I heard email chain, but I couldn't get context on that one.
Sorry, did you want to say? I'll pass it over.
Yes, so Councillor Glover here. Just repeating that question. The email chain that you spoke of with regard to the previous landowner, have we seen any of that evidence or that email chain? Has that been supplied to our CEO here at the Shire?
No, I'm happy to provide an extract of it. However, the full email chain goes through lawyers and solicitors, and I would include all that.
I would find that very helpful if I had a copy of that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? No, there's no more questions, Mr. Sheehan. I'd just like to thank you very much for the deputation.
Thank you, Councillor Inge. Thank you, councillors. Mr Rose. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bye for now.
Bye. Disconnected. Thank you for that. The next deputation we have is Mr. Fowler.
Thank you. This deputation is on behalf of the Donnybrook Ratepayers and Residents Association. I apologise for some of my hesitant speaking. I am currently suffering from some breathing issues, so you'll have to bear with me. Tonight, in my deputation, I'm going to highlight some of the issues involved in this project, but I'm going to offer solutions to the project and how Deborah can be involved and possibly come to an outcome that everyone involved would be happy with. So, Deborah's not against the sporting precinct upgrade, never has been. However, we've got to a point where council cannot proceed because there's no detailed project development plan, there is no feasibility study, there's no business case study. We have only just received the Anna Dixon report, which was based on an operational model. And just speaking about that, the governance model was the original Peter Kenyon report. Now, I asked the question at a previous council meeting, what happened to the Peter Kenyon report? And I was told we did not engage Mr. Kenyon. I have documentation here from Mr. Kenyon. He's not very happy, and we will deal with that at a later time. But Mr. Kenyon was engaged by council to look at a governance model, and I won't go into that anymore now, but we'll deal with that later. And there's no fair outcome for all sporting groups, which was part of it. Public consultation, just like to remind you, there was an open door session 17th of August 2021. The answers to those questions made it into the attachments of the agenda this last week, 8 months later. Do you think? I'll let you work that out. So just a little quick brief update. The master plan has not been endorsed by council. The May 2020 council meeting was to support the master plan in principle, allowing for no negotiation and changes to be made that best suit all end users and sporting groups prior to request for tender. So you haven't achieved that, there is no way you can go to tender. Item 4 on that list is instruct the Chief Executive Officer that in relation to the project, any further precinct design development grant funding contracts or requests for tender requires pre-approval of council. Just a little bit of background. Back in 2020, 28th of October actually, 2020, I've just highlighted a few things there. Acknowledges the previous, in principle, $3 million capped. So it's capped, you can't go any higher than that. There was a bit highlighted a bit further down, that council approving a more detailed concept plan. So council made that resolution and voted on it, so I haven't seen a more detailed development development plan, and we also still don't have a business case that was voted on. So we still don't have a business case. I'm not exactly sure what meeting this came out of. It may have been the same one, but essentially the highlighted part there is the sport culture industries. The final master plan and business case is required to meet and be presented to the local minister, which was the Honourable Mick Murray's, not anymore, in order to meet the government timelines for consideration. So you definitely do have to have a master plan and a business plan presented to a minister. Now, Mr Rose has mentioned tonight that he spoke to Department of Local Government, Sports and Culture Industry, Troy Jones. I spent a lengthy amount of time on the phone with him yesterday, described the project. First words he said to me was, it's unlikely that this will get past the minister's desk. Troy Jones deals in this kind of work. That's what his job is. And a similar project to this that he's done a number of around in the regions is nowhere near $9.7 million. Okay, so we've spent $250,000. That's gone. Got no more money left. And in the item tonight, we're requesting another $60,000 to finish off, I guess, some tender documents and what have you. Has anybody seen a 3D model or elevation drawings of a $9.7 million two-storey proposal? Because currently we have in the agenda attachments, we've got a hand-sketched 2D drawing. Now, just to remind you, the Donnybrook Football Club back in 2016-2017 had three-dimensional drawings of their proposal for the Christian Pavilion at the beginning of their project, at the beginning of their fundraising campaign. They had 3D drawings to see what it was people were going to put their money into. The Donnybrook Tennis Club had 3D drawings done, I'm not exactly sure how many years ago now, but maybe 5, something like that, of a redevelopment of the tennis club. Guess what? We've got three-dimensional drawings, elevation drawings of that proposal. I ask, or can you get your head around the fact that you're trying to vote on a proposal without any kind of concept of what it is you're going for? That's enough of the issues that you've got, so we'll go to the next slide. And the solutions that we think you could achieve to make this project come to fruition. First step, you need to defer tonight's decision to a special meeting. Based on the number of questions and deputations on this project, it would be wise to do so. It's in the Local Government Act. Second thing, you need to establish a coordinating committee per the Department of Local Government, Sports and Cultural Industries feasibility study guidelines. I've sent this to all the councillors in the past and spoke to Troy yesterday, and he said this should have been one of the first steps in the process. Third thing, don't rush. There is no need to rush. You've been told that things are rising, prices are rising. That's not the issue here. I'll explain that a little bit in a minute. Use the $6 million COVID stimulus funding to for a reduced design needs-based model, build a football club, a Christian pavilion with community sport. Bring everybody back on board with this project and you'll go a long way. Next slide, please. Scrap the design tender. Okay. Scrap the design and construct tender model as it's too expensive, it's too much of a risk. Construction costs and supply issues. So it's supply issue is what's going to be the problem. Use expression of interest tender process, Shire in-house project management, refrain from borrowing increased rates due to the upward pressure of household, local businesses and uncertain times. So next slide. Deborah and councillors workshop with, so what I'm proposing is that we have a workshop with locals, local project managers, local estimators, local building contractors, local earth moving contractors, local electricians, local plumbers and local suppliers. We have all the skill set in our Shire to do this. May I just, I've got one more slide to go. Two more, sorry, if I can have an extension of time. Okay, that's fine. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Madam President. Thanks, Brad, and sorry to hear about your poor health. I hope you recover.
Thank you.
I've asked you this before, however, it's good to have it on record, and with information, sometimes answers will change, but does Deborah still hold the view that the $6 million grant from the state government does not require a Shire contribution of $3 million? Yes,
that's correct.
On what grounds?
The COVID recovery funding money had no strings, no strings attached. This was told to you by Troy Jones from the Department of Sport, Culture and Industries when he did his deputation. However, the previous Shire President and the CEO wrote a letter to the Premier offering up to $3 million contribution to elevate the project up the list. And as far as we understand, the $6 million has no requirement, and the reason for that is when you stimulate an economy, you don't ask the economy to put in a third. That's the basis of COVID economy, stimulus money.
Who does that come from?
The Premier, from the government. When you stimulate the economy, you do not ask the economy to put in a third.
That's their statement, is it?
Do you not understand? Do you not understand the answer?
I'm asking you, is that their statement?
Troy Jones from the Department of Local Government, Sports and Cultural Industries said in his deputation there is no co-funding requirement.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Councillor Atham?
Yeah, here's a bit of a free kick for you, Brad. Just list all the positive and beneficial projects that Deborah has undertaken since its formation.
No. What sort of ridiculous question is that, Shane?
Okay. That's enough.
Brad, I'll read it just in case you didn't understand the question.
That's enough. Thank you.
I just asked Brad to list the positive and beneficial projects that Deborah has undertaken since its formation. Is that not an opportunity to tell everyone in the crowd all the good work you're doing?
I'm not going to answer your question, Shane, because it's ridiculous, but I will make mention that Deborah is one of the fastest growing associations in Donnybrook. We have big numbers of members. I'm not telling you how many, and open and transparent as you like. The thing is, it's not about...
Okay, that's enough. Well, next question, please. Councillor Glover, did you have a question? Okay, Mr Fowler, I have a question. One of the minutes, previous minutes, I think it was May 2020, it referenced a business case if required. Now, I believe, I think the CEO mentioned earlier that a business case is not required.
Thanks, Leanne, for your question. If you have a look at the letter to the Premier that the CEO and the ex-Shire President wrote to the Premier stating that he would be supplied with a business case. If you refer to Mick Murray's report on the ABC Facebook page when they announced the announcement, Mick Murray said categorically you will need to supply a business case.
Okay, another question is, you mentioned about don't rush. Prices are going up $150,000 a month. What's, with your solution, how many months is this going to take?
Thank you for your question, Leanne. The reference to don't rush is, it is not the increase in prices that is going to cause an issue with this project. It is going to be supply and actually even trying to get someone to do the project. Now, if you remember at the Deborah meeting at the golf club last year, I made reference to this, exactly this point. If we had started this project 12 months ago, when you wanted to start the project, you'd be in about a $3 million hole right now, because you would not have had the ability to complete the project. So the solution is work within your means, don't borrow the extra money, because that puts upward pressure on households and businesses, which in this time, when the Prime Minister's on the TV today trying to bring pressures down.
Just one more question. If this was built 12 months ago, when it was $3 million cheaper, wouldn't the price be set at that time?
No, because, thank you for your question, Leanne, because when you go for a request to tender, the companies that do the tender pass on any increase in material costs or any unforeseen things gets passed on to the client. It's not a fixed contract price, and that's where the problem would lie. If you were to start it, if you'd started this 12 months ago, you would have started presumably a project which had included some of the other sporting groups, and you would have run out of money, so you wouldn't have been able to complete the project.
I understand it's all in what's in the tender document. If the tender document is very specific, very strict.
Good luck with that, because you don't have the facilities to keep that tender so tight. The company that will be doing the job has a group of people trying to tear your tender apart. That's their job, and they will find holes in it. Now, irrespectively of the cost, interest rates might be rising a little bit. If interest rates go up a little bit, it's going to put household pressures to $100 to $200 per week on households with your average mortgage. The problem is going to be in supply. You cannot get materials.
Okay.
And I'll give you an example. It's a very big project I spoke to the other day with a builder. Everything was coming along absolutely fantastic. They could not get insulation, and the project was held up for 3 months because they couldn't get insulation.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? No? All right. Thank you very much for your deputation.
Thank you for your time.
Call up to the next one.
Mr. Scaffidi's left.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Scaffidi's not doing much.
Oh.
Yeah, so we'll go to the other.
Okay, so we're going to Mr. Heerman. Is that right? Yes, Mr. Heerman. Is Mr. Heerman still here?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for giving me the time to speak on behalf of the Donnybrook Football Club in regard to this VC Mitchell Park development. And might I say, initially, I'm just disappointed at the way so many people are white-anting the concept of this project and the incorrect portrayal of saying that this is a Donnybrook Football Club project is just completely wrong and it needs to be addressed. This has always been a community project with everybody in the community, not just the sporting clubs, everyone in the community invited to participate. And I see the project down the line, maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years, attracting organisations such as the CWA, Lions, the Men's Shed things and the radio and things like that. This is just not about sport. It's about the whole community. And it's been very poorly and badly misrepresented by the white ants, and some of them are here in this room tonight.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go into details, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. One of the issues that I have is I believe that the overall concept of this project has been lost through this misrepresentation, this deceitful and dishonest at times misrepresentation. I'll put, from my perspective and the football club's perspective, and I think the greater Shire's perspective, the concept to councillors, because I'm sure there's some councillors in here have actually not heard about it. And the worry I have in doing this is I'm going to go over rake over old coals, rake over old ground, because I've presented to the Shire before. But basically, the Shire approached the football club, and I stress that, the Shire approached the football club in 2020, I think it was, in regards to the redevelopment of VC Mitchell Park. The football club looked at it and said, what a great opportunity, how do we make it work? And as a community, I still see it as a great opportunity, an opportunity that we need to make work for the benefit for the future residents of this district. It's not for the club, it's for the whole community. And just from a DFC, a Donnybrook Football Club's perspective, now our current club rooms are well past the use-by date. Well past. The growth in the code, in AFL, is massive in Donnybrook. We now have women playing footy. We have a women's team, have had for the last 2 seasons, and we've got junior girls playing junior footy. It's put an enormous amount of pressure on the current facility as well as the oval. There are no provision for female change rooms on VC Mitchell Park. None. The football club put some temporary facility in there in 2020, and to say it's good would be well overstating the situation. It's really not up to scratch, but the girls are putting up with it and dealing with it. But the football club, at their own expense, and I think it was something like $15,000, went into providing that facility for the home team girls. It does not provide a facility for away teams, visiting team ladies to change. It does not provide facilities for lady umpires to change. And we are getting more and more lady umpires coming through the system now and operating in South West National Football League games. And the pressure on these facilities, the oval, the change rooms and everything, is putting enormous pressure on scheduling. And for argument's sake, during the football season, the home and away season, every weekend there's roughly 1,000 participants go through VC Mitchell Park. And to cater for them, the juniors, we run a Super Saturday where we schedule somewhere between 6 and 8 games on VC Mitchell Park in one day. We start at 8 o'clock in the morning, we finish at 6 o'clock at night. And let me tell you, it's pretty hard to see the ball at 6 o'clock at night in June July, early August. We're not complaining, but these are the issues. We're trying to deal with them. We're managing them as best we can. But these are the issues to deal with this precinct. They are not adequate. Training space has become extraordinarily limited, particularly having the women. We do not have another facility, another oval in the area to relocate training. It's all got to be done at VC Mitchell Park. And ground lighting, well, that's a joke. In the middle of the ground, the measurement is 0 when you turn the lights on in the evening, is 0. And so we have a duty of care issue there. With the ball coming out of the lights, people are getting hit in the face. Girls in particular are having trouble with their hands and their fingers. I know that the lighting's been taken away from the scope, but the reality is the lighting is essential for the development and growth of football in this town. Visiting teams' facilities are completely inadequate. And as you know, the change rooms are up the hill. The teams have got to run down a thoroughfare and run back a thoroughfare. And there's been numerous close shaves and in actual fact incidents while that's happened with people slipping, dodging cars and things like that. That is just not appropriate in terms of duty of care. And the other thing with those away change rooms that we need to understand is if a player gets badly injured, ACL, concussion, bad shoulder or something like that, and is removed from the ground on the stretcher, you cannot get a stretcher into those change rooms. So if you're waiting for an ambulance, they're sitting outside on the ground in the rain. Just not good enough in this day and age. We need to have this whole complex built, rebuilt and refurbished. Spectator facilities are degraded and inadequate. The toilet facilities for spectators are provided by the Donnybrook Football Club. Not public toilets, but provided by the Donnybrook Football Club. The reality is it's an old toilet block that was built, I think, in 1968. And the football club has sort of grown on the front of it. The ability that the football club has now to satisfy licensing court requirements has just become difficult because of the age and the design of the building. The drainage of the toilets, the drainage in the bar, none of them are adequate to satisfy licensing court requirements. Will require substantial funding to fix. And that substantial funding, I have no doubt, would sort of hopefully connect us to the sewerage. At the moment, we're on septics. And I can tell you, we have, on busy days, particularly school sports days, we have lots of troubles with the toilets. And then, if we have a busy day in the middle of winter, and the water table's up, we also have more trouble. These things need to be addressed. This is a public facility. It's not a private facility, it's a public facility. And we need, as a community, to address them. So, being approached by the representatives of our Shire, our attitude was, this sounds great, how do we make it work? The DFC understood and accepted that this proposed redevelopment was not just about sport, and football in particular, gee whiz, but a whole precinct plan, a community development that embraced all sections of the greater community. A development that everyone could have access to the facility. A facility that would be used for all sorts of activities, not just football. And we understand that this concept involves challenges, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. We believe that these challenges can be met and managed with constructive and goodwill and common sense. And I'm starting to wonder where that's all gone. The footy club stands to lose its autonomy and independence and potential income by adopting this position. However, the football club is prepared to adopt a position for the greater community good. A position and a vision that will see a community centre that will be more than just a club. Okay. Any chance of me having a minute? Okay. Righto.
Any questions? Yes, councillor Massey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Harriman. I don't know whether you can answer this question this evening, but do you think that the club will be able to manage with the facility that's currently proposed as a two-storey facility, if all the same facilities and space were available, but instead of being two-storey, it was over a single-storey footprint? Do you think that would be a possible thing to explore?
Look, I would counsel against, from my perspective, this is about the precinct, and by doing that, you're actually impacting on the integrity of the original concept. And the problem with that precinct that we have up there at the moment is there's no connectivity. And you have the rec centre wide at the top, and you have the tennis club, and you have the footy club down the bottom, and there's absolutely no connectivity. The concept is about bringing all those sports together, and future sports, maybe rugby or rugby sevens or hockey or soccer or whatever it happens to be that could be developed up there, bringing them together so that we've got a common facility, a common home where we can all interact and communicate with and support each other. At the moment, everyone's in silos and there's no connectivity.
Thank you, Mr Heman. You got a further question?
Yes, if I may. I couldn't agree with you more, Mr Herman, that sounds the best proposal, but given that we have to meet budget constraints, I'm not quite sure how you're thinking that we might be able to meet something within budget if we stick with the two-storey proposal and other things that entails. Do you have a comment there, please?
Look, we'd certainly consider it. We certainly haven't been asked the question at this point. You're the first one to ask me that question. We'd have to consider it, obviously. But to me, it'd be a step backwards. It doesn't address spectator. It doesn't enhance any spectator capacity by going one story. Even there where we are now, the spectator facilities really need ramping up because they're deteriorating, they're falling apart. They're bits of old paving that we're asking people to sit on. And that's just not good enough in this day and age.
Okay. Is there any further questions? Councillor Smith?
Thanks for your deputation. Just going by what you've just read out and going against what Mr Fowler had said, as in there's no rush to get this precinct and we can figure out ways to get through all these issues. How long or what would be your plan if this takes another 2 years to get through? How's that going to affect the football club?
Well, we probably have trouble with the licensing court for a start. The football club will keep operating, but the issue that I have in delaying the project is that we're losing value day in, day out. The Shire President said we're losing $150,000 a month. That's an extraordinary amount of money. I think we've got to make a decision and move on this ASAP.
Thank you for the question. Are there any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr Heman. Given the current circumstances at that football club, does the South West National Football League have a process of assessing the quality of facilities to determine whether they're fit to conduct football matches on those grounds or in those facilities? So I guess another way of putting it, is there a risk that the South West Football League could say that the facilities within Donnybrook are not suitable for hosting football matches into the future?
I'm not sure whether they have a process, Councillor Newman, thanks for the question, but certainly clubs can and do lodge complaints, and for argument's sake, our football club lodged a complaint last year in regards to facilities in Collie, and the Collie Shire Council, as a result, had to fix that, listen to the complaint and take some action. I would hope that the South West Football League would not go down the road of withdrawing the right for Donnybrook to host football games, but that's not to say they won't. But I think it'd be doubtful.
Okay, thank you. Is there a further question? That's it. Is there any other questions before I ask a couple? Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Peter. Just can you give us a bit of a snapshot of what's happening from the footy club side of things with dealing with the other sports who share the precinct as well, in regards to meetings and things like that? What's been happening?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, over the last couple of years since the project was first posted, I guess, put out there, and all the partner sports, what's been happening from the footy club's perspective in regards to dealing with the other teams or clubs and associations?
Well, initially the football club was invited to sit on a working party, which we did along with a number of other sporting clubs, and we had protracted discussions in regards to this this concept. We did a number of tours to Pingelly and to Narrogin and to Katanning and to Pemberton, inspecting facilities, trying to work out what would work for Donnybrook. There was at times some dissent within that working party because, for whatever reason, some clubs, some parties within the meeting continued to say this is about the football club and nothing else, which was completely wrong. And that ultimately, I had no knowledge of this. Mr. Fowler convened a meeting with some other sporting clubs and then developed what seems to me as an opposition plan to the footy club, without any knowledge to the footy club. And to me, that actually goes against the conventions.
That's enough. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyhow, Madam Chairman, we were not invited, and as a consequence, we had no opportunity to influence those gatherings. I think that's
enough, Mr. Himmons. Thank you. I just want to have a quick question in regards to contribution towards this project.
Yep.
There's some recommendations and some amendments for that will be coming through tonight, and one of them is to co-contribute $250,000.
Yep.
What are your thoughts? Is the footy willing to actually take out a self-supporting loan to help fund this project?
Well, as my correspondence to the CEO indicated, Madam Chairman, is that we are supportive of the concept, but until such time we see the details, I cannot actually say whether we will adopt it. But we are extremely supportive and we'll work constructively with the Shire to see if we can bring that about. But we certainly need to see the details. At this stage, it's just a preliminary proposal.
Right.
But from my perspective, the football club will do everything it can to make this project work.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions before we move to our next deputation? Oh, Councillor Newman.
Sorry, I meant to ask this question before, Mr. Himmons. If you could perhaps just describe what do you consider, what does the football club consider to be the most critical aspects of the facility from a football club perspective to resolve or to rectify? So what are the facilities that are most significant that need to be fixed for the football club to be able to operate into the future?
To be specific, the sewerage. We need to be connected to deep sewerage. And then, to follow that down, we need to have change rooms, changing facilities for both men and women, located at a position that is acceptable for football in terms of the VC Mitchell Park. Having change rooms 100 metres up the hill is just inadequate,
Okay.
totally inadequate.
Thank you very much. Then, thanks very much. Thanks very much for your deputation. We'll move on to the final deputation for tonight, and it's the former Shire President, Brian Peace.
Thank you, Madam President, for this opportunity to address the council and the staff, and including those in the gallery. But I know that they're here to listen rather than to debate my proposition I wish to put forward in the next 10 minutes. I'd like to say that in most of what the President of the Football Club said in terms of this project, as far as I'm concerned, was never, ever just about the football club. However, the genesis of this project did come from the football club. And the only people in this room that actually know the discussions with the state government is actually myself and the CEO. And the discussion took place with the member for Collie Preston, who was the minister at the time. And he raised with us that he'd been approached by the Donnybrook Football Club to, in fact, to provide some funding under the normal sport and rec, whatever it's called, program. And he said, so what do you think about this? And at that stage, I'm no longer a member of the football club, but I was at that stage, so I had to declare an interest and say, we should think about this. He then came back to us and he said, as a matter of urgency, you need to get a proposition in front of the Premier, the COVID King, because he's dishing out funding under the COVID recovery plan. This money wasn't about the Department of Sport and Rec and what have you, although they're the agency who are delivering the project. So the Premier we were asked to write a letter to the Premier, and that letter is available for everyone to see. And Mick Murray said, you will elevate the status of your request to the top shelf if you propose that the Shire might make a significant contribution to this project. Simply, that was the proposition. That's what they came back to us. And I'm gobsmacked and can't believe that still in this community, reported in the Manjimup Bridgetown Times today, that Deborah is still of the opinion that we can get $6 million without putting in $3 million of money into this project. That to me has never, I understand there's a letter around that suggests that is the case. We do need to go back to the original proposition that was 3 from the Shire and the government put 6 in. Where the issue from Mr Jones is getting confused, he was asked if the Shire didn't put in the 3 million, would the government still give 6 million? He is still of the opinion, well, you need to ask them that. They may give you less, but they still may be prepared to give you some money. So right now, as I understand it, is that the government is still of the opinion, and let me pick up this point. This was a COVID recovery proposition. And I pick up a point made by Anna Dixon in her report that says that the businesses, the hospitality industry in the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup at the moment